Hello, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11. And no, this series is not yet over. Quite honestly, and I actually made this video a while ago when we had a crash. And I just didn't have the heart to continue. A little bit, not just this series, but just a little bit of burnout. Been dealing with other things, not YouTube related, that's also sort of caused some of the, I don't know if burnout really is the right, but some of the distraction, shall we say. And so I've really only been posting stuff to the YouTube channel that I've been making during live streams, Saturday and Sunday, as well as on the Slytherin channel for the Strategic Command series. So that's all that's really been being posted. So, and I got feedback, very good feedback, and I like your feedback, that this is already going slow enough that me playing this while being distracted by people chatting with me was not the best option. And so I fully believed them and took that to heart. So that I haven't been making more of these. So we're going to continue here today. Got to collect, well, that unit and that unit. There, get them over to the Middle East. Got some stuff going, so, oh, I need to also, I do a lot of work, and that was sort of the frustration when it last crashed, because I had done all the sort of background work that I normally do before starting an episode, and I didn't have the heart to go through it again just 5 minutes or so into an episode within a crash. Getting units back to the front and shifting around. It's not the most exciting part of the stream series. Okay. And so, if you're wondering about the future of this series, well, I'm probably going to quit when more or less like Berlin falls, because I'm predicting that it will. Now, if the Germans can hold out and we can make some headway here, well then great, we're going to continue, because they're obviously holding out on, though having setbacks on the Eastern Front. I think the setbacks are partially due to things like, because like the setbacks down here that they're sort of all fleeing here is a bunch of units going to go deal with the Normandy landings, and also the sort of monthly outbreak of partisans down here that how do I put this, I really think are too much for the AI to handle. I like it all, the Black Ice stuff going down here for players, because players can do so, handle it, human players, but the AI I think is just playing shifting of units and things like that is a bit much. Oh, we can do a party rally. Great, that'll help us out, reduce our revolt risk. Yes, we can. We're facing a big storm there. Okay, well, let's... Fighter planes. Let's do more fighter planes. It's not just needing to repair, but I think we've lost some units. So we'll do those. And now I think, yes, we have a armored division here. Now, let's take a look. Do we have good sort of HQ? No, for I don't. Looking to see if we had like a veteran one or something. No. And I'm not going to use one of the immersive infantry ones to confuse me. I think you should have higher job position. Oh, Chandra Boss. No, we're not going to quite do Chandra Boss. That's the leader of the Indian National Army or whatever, the people that he would be good. Betrayed the British. I know my friend Azad's Hind would feel that they were just doing the right thing, but India's army was the largest all-volunteer army in World War II. And yeah, we can talk about some of the bad conditions, but I would say mostly the volunteers were done because they volunteered for it. I mean, that may sound, it wasn't like, well, you volunteer, you're going to, be, jailed or starve or whatever. No, there was the famine going on over in Bengal, but I don't think that was directly related, or there was much recruiting directly related to that. But so I put that when volunteers unvolunteer as being betraying. So if it was a conscripted army and the people go, well, I'm not really British and I don't want to fight for them. Okay, I can see that argument a little more. But I'm sending some ships down to here to grab up these, and these units are already heading back to start heading them to the Middle East. As you can see, we're not really holding the line readily. Oh, you should be attached to a higher level. I mean, because you can just see we're fighting here. We're fighting along the line. But that ain't gonna hold. No, more fighters, I guess. Okay, now moved up some fighters to here. Let's put them into action. Okay, you go back before you're completely destroyed. Use that one first squadron. Okay, well, maybe we should try some pounding of ground attacks fairly aggressively, or it probably won't make a big enough difference. I don't think it's going to make a substantial difference or not, but might as well give it a shot. Can they make it from their airbase? Yes. Oh, that's a fair amount of air. Another unit shattered. brought up some reinforcements. Maybe they'll hold, maybe not. We seem to more or less, obviously we're having some units forced back, but we're able to send them back, keep them. Okay, so they've crushed all of Rene and Michel of the Resistance. Outbreak of partisans in conjunction with the D-Day landings, but and no, LO really isn't meant for the AI Germany either. It was just stuck in the thing when I played it in the folder last. The human player can deal with it easy enough just by having a few garrison units in the area, including the ones given by the mod itself. It's weak. Garrison units that are meant to not imbalance anything, just sort of like go, hey, leave them in the area, deal with the okay, well, I think if we could take Adelaide, now I thought that was the last place, we would get enough victory points to win this. Okay, will you come back into the theater where you can also see about recouping some losses? Okay, other units recently arrived. I think out here in the desert is where we need most of the reinforcements. Even though I sort of sent you up there to be light infantry in the mountains, where you'll do better, but like this pack artillery is weaker than regular artillery, but it gets better benefits in particularly mountains, but also jungles and things. But it also has an armored car and anti-tank, so you know, it's on its own, it isn't going to stop a, you know, ferocious big armor, you know, stack of armored divisions, but it's definitely not without some ability in handling some of that. Now I'm also both dreading and looking forward to playing the next series as Germany. Dreading it because I've got to truly update Third Reich events, and I've heard from a few people, particularly my previous maintainer was unable to figure everything out, and I don't know exactly, and I've only taken, quite honestly, preliminary looks at it, and some of the stuff doesn't look so bad, so I don't know. I just been out of the groove, if you will, for modding work, so I do sort of need to get back into that, and then if I do so, hopefully I can mod all that up very quickly and get going, and then we can start another series as Germany. So I both want to do it and go, oh god, once I have to do all that stuff, and take up a lot of time. Because I'll tell you what, guys, I really love creating like new events, you know, the event image, coming up with the event, the idea, and even sort of, you know, coding it to build it. But I hate updating things. You know, like, oh, there's a new thing, we need to update it. Okay. Does it just change a couple little things, or do I have to go in and rebuild everything? Because I've already done it. The fun isn't the, you know, isn't the update. The fun is figuring out how to make it work and all that good stuff. So, you know, it's definitely my fault that it hasn't. Which armor is this? Armor unit training. Armor unit training. Okay, we're going to let that continue. And combine armor unit combined arms. 44, I guess we're going to let that continue to get our armor. Dealing a little better with. Okay, guys, you get to come out here and do short bombardment. Help with that. Right now, I want to defeat the Austrians with those, or Australians, sorry, with as little damage as possible, so that we can use their army to at least protect Australia from the, you know, benefits of freedom and trade and whatnot that the Americans would bring. Oh, sorry, penalties of freedom and trade and whatnot. Oh, we've even lost that province right there. Okay, yep, you guys come there. Hopefully they can get to here before they're overrun. Okay, submarine classes have advanced, very nice. Which is now grayed out. Reduces range. Do we want to reduce range to get better morale? I don't know. Yeah, you know, because you just have to look at the... And this may come off, I don't know, as bragging or nationalism or some element of that kind of thing because, hey, I'm an American and I'm talking about how great America is. And America is great. I love other places in the world too, but America is great. But I also look at it as, and the main reason I'm talking about it now is, just had someone comment on, I think it was the last German series of, you know, Hearts of Iron 3, about, well, what if Weber had lived and Goering had died so that Germany developed a strategic air force instead of what Goering did? And I'm more on Goering's side on this, quite honestly, though Weber was a very good army, or a good army general, a very good leader for the Luftwaffe. But he wanted strategic bombing. And, well, we can look at, you know, the US and Germany and Japan didn't win the war with strategic bombing. Oh, they did lots and lots of damage. They required a huge amount of resources to be put into air defense. Just think of all those anti-aircraft shells and all those anti-aircraft guns, the various 88mm guns that all could have been turned into anti-tank guns and anti-tank rounds that could have been made. Because the gun barrels are the same damn thing, but you could also have made you know, indirect artillery and whatnot. And the anti-aircraft rounds are probably closer to artillery rounds versus the, you know, high penetrating solid rounds, you know, but whatever. So you could just see just in that all of the resources that Germany did do, that would have been, you know, we're not even talking about how much, you know, damage the bombing did, whether to morale or to potential soldiers. You know, your 16-year-old in Germany in 1942 is going to be an 18-year-old in 1944, and if he dies in a bombing raid as a civilian or Hitler Youth or, you know, RAD, the Reich Arbeitsdienst, you know, he dies in that raid, he's not going to become a soldier. You know, so it's, you know, and all the workers that die, that can't build stuff, the factories, you know. So there's all kinds of damage that those bombing raids are doing. But even if we don't consider any of the actual damage that the bombing raids are doing, the shift in resources of air fighter types having to defend Germany in such heavy levels, not just the idea that we have to have something to stop some level of attacks, but heavy amounts of aircraft that can't be dominating enemy airspace or our space along the front lines. As previously mentioned, the anti-aircraft guns, the personnel to man the anti-aircraft guns. Yeah, you had, again, sort of the Hitler Youth types that were the flak helpers and the women flak helper units. That both of those units would not have been on the front lines until, you know, the Volkssturm era of, you know, collapsing in late 44 or, you know, into 45 into internal German territory. But by that time the war's already lost anyways. But they could have been, both of them could have been working in war production or some other useful thing. So yeah, strategic bombing most assuredly affected the outcome of the war. But the war was not won by the primarily American strategic bombing. Yes, Britain did a lot. But we can look at Germany's struggle for engines. Just Germany's struggle for engines. They didn't have enough for trucks, for tanks, or for aircraft. Now, they're not all the same engines, but if you look at the early Stuarts, light tanks and the Americans, the Lee Grants and the early Shermans, those are aircraft engines in those tanks. That's why they're so tall, because they're radial engines. Later on, they sort of kept the body height, but moved into, you know, inline type engines. So they're using aircraft, literally aircraft engines and tanks. The Americans are. So the Germans, you know, I can't remember a single real production of a radial engine in a ground vehicle that Germany did. And radial engines are made sort of on different machinery than you do these sort of inline engines. And that's why the main reason they had, I'm sorry, we're wandering here, but I hope you enjoy this. The main reason they made the Focke-Wulf 190 aircraft, because it was set up and made to use radial engines, which there were already production lines available for radial engines. And so instead of just producing more BF or ME 109s, which have a very small, narrow nose profile, which is a good flight characteristic, and we could argue, and there's people who know better than I could argue which is better, the 109 or the 190, but it was just mostly because, hey, they use different engines and we can produce these other engines and we don't have to stop the production lines and redo all the machinery and maybe even, you know, scrap some of the machinery or whatever to make different engines. So that, hey, yeah, we have an airframe that can do handle radial engines as a fighter. They had already been doing some radial engines, I believe, as bombers as well. And so that's why they had the two main lines of fighters that were otherwise quite similar in role. Again, just if you watch the previous series, you may remember I've looked into this, when they got a hold of some of the one Czech fighters that were in prototype stage getting ready for production when they took Czechoslovakia over. And at that time, they only had the 109 as a fighter. They hadn't had the 190 yet. They sort of evaluated as the Czech fighter not enough better than the current, because they improved the 109 over time. Not enough better than the current 109 to justify having two completely different production lines for airframes, for engines, for whatnot, there, and including, two different production lines with two different supply lines for spare parts and maintenance and training on maintenance and all of that stuff. It wasn't enough better. So even within the German reports, hey, this Czech fighter is better than ours. Do we want to build it? It's not enough better to do it. Okay, so whether the 190 is better or worse than the 109, and it's probably comes down to what features and elements and whatnot. But it's using, and the Czech engine, if I remember correctly, was an inline type engine, not a radial engine. So it was like, yeah, okay, no, we'll just have whatever aluminum manufacturing pieces stamped out and assembly people and engine productions just produce things for the 109 or whatever, or the thing. So it's engines. And so if you were to go, we're going to have 4-engine strategic bombers, because to have a proper strategic bomber, you can almost sort of do it on a 2-engine frame, but not really, not effectively, because part of it is simply to carry enough weight of bombs fast enough, because you don't want to go so slow that it takes so many hours to get to the enemy target, and the fighter aircraft come up and strafe you and land and refuel and come up and strafe you and land and refuel and come up and strafe and land and refuel you just on your way to the target or something. You don't want to fly that slowly, so you need to fly at a shall we say, a military speed. But to build enough, so to carry enough bombs to effectively strategic bomb, you need basically a 4-engine bomber. And so if you're only going to make the same number of engines as Germany was capable of making, partially because of steel limitations and partially good quality steel for engines, not just junk steel, but good steel, because those engines get hot and they got to be able to get hot and run hot for a long time, super hot, without deforming, without the metal giving up. So it's partially just access to the proper levels of steel. It's partially which is a production issue, as well as a, getting it from Sweden or digging it out of the ground, because not all iron coming out of the ground is going to make equal qualities of steel, as I've learned. So, especially with the knowledge that they had back then, we have better alloys now, of course. But, so if you were to have equal number of engines and go, okay, well, now we got to take all of Göring's twin-engine tactical bombers and get rid of that number. So we're going to end up having half the number of aircraft, because they're all 2-engine. Instead, we're building 4-engine. And since you have half the number of aircraft, you have all that extra aluminum and other bits and pieces you're going to make an aircraft out of for the engine. So Germany would have half the number of bombers than they did. And I'm presuming if you're having a strategic air force, you're not going to have too much fewer fighters anyways, so you can't divert fighter production into bomber production just to have more of. So Germany, and yes, over time Germany, and we're talking about, and with the poster was talking about he uses the long name, sorry, for, I think if I remember correctly, for it was one of the Roman the philosopher, Roman emperor, one of the last great Roman emperors. Sorry, I'm blanking on all that. Augustus, blah blah blah. Yeah, whatever. But not Augustus. Sorry. And so he's fairly well informed. But I just went back to engines, and so you're not going to have enough. And we're talking in 1940, and he was talking in 1940. had Germany, you know, prepared the way. So I think the tactical Air Force is the way to go, considering the limitations. And get back to here, air conditioning. The American subs had air conditioning. At least most of the models did. They had showers on board their submarines. Japanese didn't have showers on board their submarines. They didn't have air conditioning. And the Japanese definitely built early on some long-range submarines and they basically didn't build coastal submarines because they knew that they were going to be out in the Pacific as well. And so they did not have the production capabilities to produce frivolous things like air conditioning and showers on submarines. But the Americans did. And the Americans could have produced more of any one thing without significantly disrupting what they were already producing. It isn't a choice. Sometime, I don't know, let's just say August 1944, the U.S. decides that they're going to stop building half-tracks. Why? Because they have so many half-tracks parked in America, you know, the fighting half-track type things, that they can't imagine, they literally can't imagine what they could possibly do with any more half-tracks. Can't give them away to people anymore, you know. We only have so many ships going to Russia that we can't load more on them because, you know, we know how much our, you know, planned shipbuilding and manning is going to be. So we can't ship any more to Russia. We're already shipping as many as we can to places like Britain and Australia and other, you know, places for our allies to use them. And they were sending the half-tracks to Russia, but it's not like, oh, well, we could, you know, give 4 times as many to Russia. Well, that would mean stopping, I don't know, ammunition deliveries or some other deliveries to Russia. So it was just like, yeah, well, we'll stop building these now. Just think if the Germans, oh, we have so many half-tracks in 1944 that we just will never have enough troops to ever put in them all. And so we've got 2 years waiting here, you know, reserve of half-tracks ready to go to fight. They're just going to sit here and in the fields and wait until we need them. And then once we need them, we'll use them. So we'll just stop producing them and shift the factories over to some other thing. And so that is the type of condition the U.S. is in production. So we can talk about all of various military genius that any one side could have, but defeating America, which is different than winning the war, but defeating America is basically an impossibility, in my opinion. You know, during this time period, without going, oh yeah, well, nuclear weapons. Yeah. I've revised my opinion on how close I think Germany was to getting nukes. I thought originally they were super long ways away. I think they were closer than they were, but we're still looking at probably a 47 or 48 date. That's just me being generous, quite honestly, about when I think they might have been able to get nukes, because before I was more in the 1950 type range if they had, you know, to get anywhere to actually producing, because I've read and looked at some stuff at how big the various production facilities to get the nukes that Germany just hadn't even set up yet. You know, to get the few nukes that the U.S. did have. Okay, defensive positions, we'll do that. And Indian Army recruitment, of course, we want to continue that one because we started that fairly late. Now, that doesn't mean Germany couldn't have won. I do think Germany could have won. There's a difference between Germany winning and defeating the U.S. because, and as the poster was, oh good, we have a Gurkha division. Let's put it, a general in charge. Oh well, where's Chandra Boss? He would be a good one for this. maybe not a good, I don't know how good Chandra Bose would have been as a general. He was a political leader. Well, probably better to sort by name and go to C. Or Chandra Bose, or however you want to pronounce that, I'm not sure. Because I do believe that had Germany defeated the Soviet Union, and I think it was within their grasp to do so in the time periods, you know, 40 through to 1945. I think they went a year early, but I think they were within reality to be able to win. And as the poster who I was talking about, if the Germans had a better U-boat program developing, and they could have built more U-boats and less surface vessels even before the war. That is not as much of a binary choice as aircraft engines kind of thing. It was something, it's less than 20, and I want to say 9, but I don't remember that Germany had ocean-going U-boats at the day the war starts with Britain. You know, they have that few. And had they set up some building production set it before the war a bit better and produced even just a few more, and I'm, you know, 40, 50, I think they could have had a bigger effect. And I don't think the strategic bombing, just if you had had more of it for Britain, would have put Britain out of the war. Britain is better to defeat. And again, always go back to Sun Tzu, Sun Tzu, Sun Tzu, Sun Tzu. The indirect approach is always the best. So the direct approach, bombing Dover, making Dover, you know, a bad place to be, and then invading. Yeah, good. We have an SS Armor Division here protecting Calais, while I guess the AI is role-playing Hitler, instead of coming down here to fight. Okay, good. That's very good of you. But coming, you know, here, strategic bombing here, and then, you know, invading, you know, doing a sea lion type invasion. That is the direct approach to taking out Britain. I don't think that's the way to do it. It is the indirect approach, taking out the Mediterranean and securing the Mediterranean. Now, they did, just simply by operating down here, force the British to supply around the Mediterranean, because basically until America really steps in and does its landings here, it just isn't healthy enough to at least ship reasonably large amounts of, because there was, at some point they break the siege of Malta before really the Americans are really going in here, and they do slip. I'm trying to remember, because I read a book on the siege of Malta. They do slip, I think, some sort of, you know, naval convoys, but more naval as opposed to merchant convoys through the Mediterranean to, you know, over to here, and not just trying to get stuff to Malta while Italy really and still operating here. But most of the supplies are going around until, you know, Sicily's taken and they're able to, you know, shift supplies along the North African coast. Oh, yep. The Allies are now across the Messina Straits, which is because, I think, directly because of this. Or Germany shattering units trying to get across the Messina Straits or something, maybe, but I don't know. So they did force the supplies coming around Africa, but had you truly pushed, you know, down to the Red Sea, down to somewhere in the Middle East, and so that the Allies have to land somewhere down here and fight their way up through this god-awful terrain, and it really is god-awful terrain, and that kind of thing. And had they had you taken out Gibraltar and basically closed the Straits of Gibraltar, yeah, I think the Americans could have successfully, with British support, of course, landed here. But we know that coming through here is sort of god-awful terrain as well, that without, you know, landings in Oran and Algiers at basically the same time, could have meant, and if you had you know, had Italian and German units here as well as Vichy French units, I think you could have changed the equation, really changed the equation. And so with that, that's different than and doing that and pushing in other places, threatening India, defeating the Soviet Union, which frees up all of the resources from fighting the Soviet Union. That changes the equation of whether you can defeat Germany or not. Because there's the you know, unless you're going to be able to nuke America in significant strength. Yeah, these units are down here because I guess they got shattered trying to cross the Straits of Messina. Boy, that they have no strength left. And dropping a couple of nuclear bombs on a unoccupied America isn't going to get America to surrender. Dropping 10 or 20, because remember, these aren't the later mega, you know, super big hydrogen bombs. These are just the early bombs. Yeah. So it comes down to production. That's what World War II ultimately comes down to at some point. But there's times and moments when it isn't. The Battle of France is that. France and Britain clearly was outproducing. Yeah, good. We kept them from being overrun. Outproducing Germany clearly. But Germany, through maneuver and decision, are able to defeat the French, like I think they could have defeated the Soviets. And if it was just a war between Germany and the Soviets and any immediate sort of allies, I'm not even talking about Romania and Hungary or Italy, but just, well, maybe Romania or Hungary, but if it was just mostly Germany versus Soviet Union, I think Germany would win. And including the war of production, even if it doesn't go to a war of decision where, you know, you're racing to Moscow and they just can't put divisions fast enough in your way to stop you, even if they're building them somewhere, even if they have the manpower and the production, you know, abilities to build. I do think Germany could have won that war of attrition with the Soviet Union just on its own, because you can have a war of attrition in which you're trying to send men over the top in waves like the British were trying to do out of the way they knew how to fight wars, and have the Germans sitting in bunkers mowing them down with machine guns, smart battles, as well as Germany developing the stormtrooper tactics of sort of infiltration and attack in the trenches and attack smartly. And the British got a little better as time goes on too. So you can have, and then of course the British come up with a tank and overwhelm it as well. But so you can still have wars of attrition and production, and it not come down to the actual numbers of production. If you're employing your tactics, your equipment smarter and better than the enemy. You know, it isn't purely how many tanks or how many aircraft you build in the day. If your tanks are enough better, then, you know, numbers count, but they're not the only factor, or maybe not even the primary factor, but you still have to have enough numbers. You can't not have numbers. You have to do both. They still have brute plants. Hope it was friendly. Okay, don't quite want you to come there. I'm not gonna sort of want to leave these guys alive if I can and take. But that's gonna take a while. Do we have any fast units left here? We never really invaded with too many fast units, but get across that river. Still waiting for ships to come, and there they are. I still like Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice better than Man the Guns Hearts of Iron 4. We'll see what the Black Ice does with Hearts of Iron 4 and whatnot, and they may get that it gets better. Just throwing units at us. Okay. Well, we're going to end this episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Love to hear from you. And hopefully a little more regularly we'll get some more of these out. And like I say, I want to play until like Berlin Falls or something. We'll see. I know a few of you, and sorry, I'm forgetting some of the names. Well, I can't recommend your series to other people because you don't play to the end. And I get that point, but also I get the point of, yeah, I haven't seen any American attacks anywhere. You know, we were seeing American, you know, because in one of the comments, you know, American island hopping drive to, you know, to Tokyo. Yeah. That might be a fun series to watch if the freaking Americans would show up and, you know, counter invade Hawaii and hop and fight, because I've got divisions over here waiting to fight the Americans. You know, but they're not showing up. So just a stalemate series forever is just quite honestly not on the cards. I know you might want to see, you know, total victory or total defeat. Well, yeah. So yeah. Okay. Thanks so much.